Success doesn't disappear when no one is watching. That belief is comfortable. And it's wrong. Most people think effort only counts when it's seen. When there's feedback. When someone notices. When there's proof that it mattered. That assumption quietly shapes how they live. They work harder when eyes are on them. They slow down when the room goes quiet. They stay consistent only as long as someone is paying attention. And they never question this pattern. But this title exists because that pattern is the problem. The most important work in your life is happening in moments that leave no evidence. No reaction. No response. No reward. And that's exactly why most people abandon it. They assume nothing is happening. They assume nothing is changing. They assume the effort doesn't count yet. So they wait. They wait for visibility. They wait for motivation. They wait for a moment that feels significant enough to justify consistency. What they don't realize is that waiting is already a decision. And it's costing them more than they can see. Because success doesn't begin with recognition. It begins with behavior that feels unnecessary. Behavior that feels invisible. Behavior that feels unrewarded. Behavior that feels pointless if you're measuring progress by applause. There is a version of you that only exists when no one is watching. That version makes decisions differently. That version either keeps promises or quietly breaks them. No one else sees those moments. But they accumulate anyway. Most people think the danger is failure. It isn't. The real danger is living in a way that slowly teaches you that your actions only matter when they're noticed. That lesson reshapes identity. Quietly. Permanently. And once that shift happens, results stop being something you build and start being something you hope for. Most people never notice when this change takes place. They just feel stuck one day and can't explain why. And that's where everything actually begins. Most people believe they already understand why they aren't where they want to be. They think the explanation is obvious. Not enough time. Not enough opportunity. Not enough motivation. Those answers feel reasonable. They sound intelligent. They remove personal pressure. And that's why they're dangerous. Because when the explanation feels complete, the search stops. People spend years refining the wrong understanding of the problem. They optimize effort instead of direction. They wait for conditions instead of examining patterns. What they don't see is that the real issue isn't dramatic enough to notice. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel urgent. It doesn't look like failure. It looks like normal days handled normally. Most people assume success is blocked by something external. Circumstances. Systems. Other people. Timing. But the real separator operates quietly underneath all of that. It's not what you do when things are intense. It's what you do when nothing is happening. When the day feels average. When the effort feels small. When the result feels distant. That's where the real pattern forms. And this is why so many intelligent, capable people plateau without understanding how it happened. They aren't lazy. They aren't unaware. They aren't incapable. They're simply consistent in the wrong moments. They show discipline when pressure is high. They relax it when pressure disappears. They associate importance with visibility and invisibility with irrelevance. So they keep making tiny decisions that feel harmless. Skipping what won't be noticed. Postponing what won't be rewarded immediately. Delaying what doesn't threaten them today. None of these choices feel decisive. That's the trap. Because the most powerful forces in life rarely feel powerful in the moment. They feel quiet. They feel optional. They feel easy to ignore. This isn't about working harder. And it isn't about pushing more. It's about understanding where control actually lives. Most people are fighting the wrong battle in the wrong place. They're trying to win publicly while losing privately. They're trying to look disciplined instead of becoming disciplined. And until that distinction becomes clear, effort stays loud and results stay small. The explanation isn't missing. It's just hidden in a place most people never bother to look. Not because it's complex, but because it doesn't flatter them. And that's why the shift takes so long to happen. There is a principle that governs progress whether you acknowledge it or not. It doesn't respond to enthusiasm. It doesn't reward intensity. And it doesn't care how strongly you feel about your goals. It operates quietly, consistently, and without exception. Results are not created by moments of effort. They are created by patterns of behavior repeated when nothing seems to be at stake. This is where most people misread their own lives. They believe change happens when motivation rises, when circumstances improve, when pressure forces action. But those moments are rare, and they are not where identity is formed. Identity is shaped in repetition, in the decisions that feel too small to matter, in the actions that carry no immediate consequence. Discipline, in its real form, is not an act. It is a condition. It's the state of doing what aligns with your future even when your present feels unaffected. Most people associate discipline with force, with restriction, with intensity. That misunderstanding causes them to resist it. Real discipline is quieter than that. It doesn't argue. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't wait to feel ready. It functions like gravity. Always present. Always working. Whether you believe in it or not. Every small action either reinforces who you are becoming or weakens it. There is no neutral choice. There is no pause button. When you repeat a behavior, you aren't just producing an outcome. You are casting a vote for a version of yourself. That vote compounds. Not dramatically, not quickly, but relentlessly. This is why two people can start in the same place and end up in entirely different lives without a visible turning point. There is no explosion, no sudden transformation, just accumulation. Small acts of discipline repeated quietly begin to shape self-trust. And self-trust changes how decisions are made. Once that shift begins, behavior no longer depends on emotion. It becomes consistent because identity demands it. The opposite is also true. Small acts of neglect repeated quietly erode credibility with yourself. Not all at once, but gradually enough to go unnoticed. And once self-trust weakens, effort becomes louder. Motivation becomes necessary. Resistance increases. Nothing feels stable. This principle explains why people who know what to do still don't do it. Knowledge doesn't govern behavior. Identity does. Until discipline moves from something you try to something you are, progress remains fragile. This is the first real layer of clarity. But it's not the whole picture. Because knowing this principle doesn't guarantee application. And understanding it doesn't protect you from avoiding it. That's where structure becomes necessary. Not to create comfort, but to remove excuses. Number 1. Reduce decision-making before the day begins. Discipline collapses when every action requires a fresh choice. When you decide in the moment, emotion enters the equation. And emotion is unreliable. Structure removes negotiation. This is not about rigid schedules or aggressive control. It's about eliminating unnecessary friction. When a behavior is pre-decided, it stops draining energy. It becomes automatic. And what becomes automatic becomes consistent. The internal shift here is simple. You stop asking yourself what you feel like doing. You start acting from who you already decided to be. A quiet daily example looks unimpressive. Waking at the same time. Starting work the same way. Ending the day with the same closing action. None of this feels powerful. That's why it works. Number 2. Protect one non-negotiable daily standard. Not a list. Not a system. One standard. This is where most people overcomplicate discipline. They try to change everything at once and end up sustaining nothing. A single daily standard creates identity pressure. It tells you who you are regardless of mood. The standard must be small enough to repeat on bad days, and important enough to matter on good ones. Internally, this does something critical. It rebuilds credibility. Every day you meet that standard, you reinforce self-trust. And self-trust removes the need for motivation. A simple example is not impressive. Reading a fixed number of pages. Writing for a set amount of time. Saving a defined amount, no matter how small. The point is not the result. The point is the signal it sends to yourself. Number 3. Separate comfort from reward. Most people unintentionally reward avoidance. They rest before effort. They distract before responsibility. They consume before producing. This reverses the natural order. Discipline restores sequence. Effort first. Relief later. Not as punishment, as alignment. When comfort follows discipline, it reinforces behavior. When comfort replaces discipline, it erodes it. The internal consequence is subtle but serious. You stop associating progress with struggle and start associating it with completion. A daily example doesn't need intensity. Finish the task, then relax. Complete the obligation, then disengage. This trains your nervous system to expect peace after action, not before. Number 4. Limit exposure to mental noise. Discipline weakens in cluttered environments. Not physical clutter. Mental clutter. Constant input creates emotional volatility. Volatility destroys consistency. This isn't about isolation. It's about control. When attention is fragmented, discipline feels heavy. When attention is protected, discipline feels lighter. The internal shift here is stability. You begin operating from intention instead of reaction. A quiet daily example looks boring. Scheduled silence. Restricted scrolling. Intentional breaks from information. Nothing dramatic happens. And that's the point. Number 5. End the day with proof. Not reflection. Not evaluation. Proof. One completed action that confirms alignment. This anchors identity. It gives the mind evidence before sleep. And evidence shapes belief. When the day ends without proof, doubt accumulates. When it ends with proof, momentum carries. The example is simple. Finish one thing fully. Close one loop intentionally. Not to feel productive. To remain credible to yourself. This framework does not make you feel fixed. It does not remove discomfort. It preserves it. Because discomfort is not the enemy. Instability is. And this structure exists to eliminate instability, not struggle. At this stage, most people expect momentum to feel good. They expect clarity to bring relief. They expect discipline to reduce resistance. It doesn't. Resistance increases when you start moving in the right direction. Boredom becomes louder. Silence feels heavier. The absence of validation starts to irritate the mind. This is not a warning sign. It is confirmation. The disciplined path is quiet by design. There is no audience for most of the work that matters. And the mind, conditioned by stimulation, reacts to that quiet as if something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. Discipline is not fueled by excitement. It's sustained by self-respect. Every time you follow through without being seen, you reinforce an internal hierarchy. Future over present. Direction over comfort. Identity over impulse. Comfort is expensive. Not immediately, but over time. It charges interest in missed capacity, in weakened confidence, an erosion of trust with yourself. Most people don't notice the cost because it's deferred. They only feel the bill years later. Quiet consistency prevents that debt from accumulating. When you keep promises to yourself, something fundamental changes. Not emotionally, structurally. Your mind stops negotiating. It starts complying. That compliance is not obedience. It's alignment. You begin to act in ways that feel natural because they match who you believe you are. This is where overachievement actually comes from. Not from effort. From identity stability. The overachiever is not working harder. They are working with less internal friction. They don't debate every action. They don't wait for mood alignment. They don't require intensity to function. They move because movement is normal. Boredom doesn't disappear here. It deepens. The work becomes repetitive. The progress becomes less visible. The novelty fades. This is where most people unconsciously sabotage themselves. They seek stimulation. They introduce chaos. They abandon what's working because it stopped feeling rewarding. But boredom is the price of mastery. And silence is the environment where discipline compounds. When you continue despite that, something solid forms. Self-respect is built through evidence, not affirmation. And evidence only accumulates when no one is watching. You begin trusting your decisions. You stop explaining yourself. You stop seeking permission to stay consistent. That internal strength doesn't announce itself, but it changes how you carry responsibility. Discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like protection. Protection from regression, from drift, from self-betrayal. And this is where most people misunderstand comfort again. They think discipline removes freedom. It does the opposite. It reduces volatility. And volatility is what makes life feel exhausting. When standards are clear, decisions are easier. When decisions are easier, energy is conserved. When energy is conserved, capacity expands. That expansion is quiet, but it's permanent. You don't become disciplined by trying harder. You become disciplined by refusing to abandon alignment. This is why promises to yourself matter more than goals. Goals are external targets. Promises are internal contracts. Breaking goals disappoints you. Breaking promises weakens you. Keeping them rebuilds authority over your own behavior. That authority is what creates long-term momentum. Not bursts of effort. Not intensity. Consistency, even when it feels uneventful, is doing the real work. And if this phase feels unremarkable, you're in the right place. Because nothing extraordinary is built loudly. Think about the version of you that exists a few years from now. Not the dramatic version. Not the fantasy. The quiet one. The one who no longer debates simple actions. The one who doesn't need pressure to follow through. The one who moves steadily without explaining why. That future is not created by intensity. It is shaped by what you do on ordinary days. Every day presents the same decision in different forms. Act in alignment. Or delay it. Most people believe the consequences of that decision are immediate. They're not. They accumulate silently. The life you eventually live is built in moments that felt forgettable at the time. Moments when no one was watching. Moments when it would have been easy to drift. Responsibility is not heavy when it's accepted early. It becomes heavy only when it's avoided. Control works the same way. When you take ownership of small actions consistently, life simplifies. Not because it becomes easier, but because it becomes predictable. You know what you'll do when resistance appears. You know how you'll respond when comfort tempts you. You know who you are even when motivation disappears. That certainty is calm. Not loud. Not emotional. And it compounds. You don't need to overhaul your life in one decision. You only need to stop abandoning it in small ones. Discipline does not announce its arrival. But one day, you notice that your standards are stable. Your direction is clear. And your progress no longer depends on mood. That is quiet certainty. And it's built the same way every time. Without witnesses. Without applause. Without urgency. Just alignment, repeated. That's where everything changes.